Hi, I'm Gail Sokol, and on today's show, we're going to be making yeasty cinnamon rolls.
Welcome to Baking Radio. Learn the art and science of baking with author, educator, and award-winning chef, Gail Sokol. Whether you've been baking your whole life or you're brand new to the world of baking and you're looking to build your confidence and learn new skills in the kitchen, you're in the right place. This is Baking Radio.
So I'm going to tell you about a fantasy I have, a food fantasy. I'm standing in my kitchen at the counter next to a warm, just-baked batch of cinnamon rolls. The scent of warm cinnamon draws me in. I gently take a cinnamon roll from the pan that I had just made. It's warm, and I start unraveling the soft, yeasty layers and eating them layer by layer until I reach nirvana, that center middle piece, that little nugget, my favorite part of a cinnamon roll. And I savor it as I gobble it up. All right, now I'm back to reality. On today's show, we're going to be discussing how to make the best yeasty cinnamon rolls ever. And there's nothing like homemade cinnamon rolls, even when you get them from the grocery store in that little package that will remain nameless. So in a few podcast shows from season 1, I discussed yeast breads and the process of fermentation. So let's review very quickly. Fermentation is the process where yeast eats sugar and give off two waste products, carbon dioxide and alcohol. The carbon dioxide gas bubbles get stuck within the gluten matrix. Remember, that's that web of fibers that forms when wheat flour and water are mixed together within a dough, right? Once in the oven, these carbon dioxide gas bubbles, along with any air inside the dough, expand in the hot oven during baking and force that dough to rise. Cinnamon rolls, since they contain some milk, butter, and sugar, they're a type of bread, type of yeast bread, that are known as a rich yeast bread, as opposed to a lean yeast bread like French bread or Italian bread that have no tenderizing ingredients like milk or sugar or eggs in them. Since all the ingredients are mixed together at once, this type of bread is also known as a straight dough. No dough is made ahead, there's no pre-ferment, no sourdough, and there's no starter of any kind. This type of yeasted dough is pretty simple, and it's a great place to start if you have never baked a rich yeast bread before. And I always like the fact that if it doesn't come out perfect, you can eat your mistakes because they're delicious. The recipe I'm going to share with you for these incredible cinnamon rolls, I have been making for years and years. I started baking them with my kids when they were little, and I have continued making them with young students in my baking courses throughout the years, and they're always such a hit. They cannot be compared to store-bought. I remember one story where one child she was a teenager, she was going home from one of my classes on the bus, and I think she had a box of cinnamon rolls that she had just made in my class. And it was this recipe, and I think 5 people offered her money to buy them off of her. So she had to basically clutch them to her chest to get them safely home. So if you're ready for the best yeasty cinnamon roll recipe ever, here goes. So first you want to spray 2 13 by 9 by 2 inch rectangular baking pans with nonstick cooking spray. And these are the type of cinnamon rolls that sort of bake together, but you can make them on sheet pans as well. So you'd get 4 sheet pans and put parchment paper on them, and you would have cinnamon rolls that don't bake together and make friends, sort of like, those cutout dolls, those paper dolls, but these will sort of join together like those paper dolls. They're delicious. So the first thing you're going to do is in a medium saucepan, you're going to heat 1 cup of milk, 1 cup of water, and 1.5 sticks or 12 tablespoons of unsalted butter that I've allowed to soften. And you want that just to get warm. We don't want to kill the yeast. Remember, we're dealing with yeast. This is a yeast bread. So we want to make sure we don't knock the yeast off before it has time to do its job, which is to help our beautiful dough to rise. So we want it warm. So if you stick your finger in it, It should just feel tepid, just tepid. And yeast will die at 140 degrees Fahrenheit. So you don't want to go too high. 110 is pretty hot. So you want to get maybe 110 or less. You want to add 5 eggs to your warm milk mixture and whisk gently. All right, you also don't want to cook your eggs at this point. In the bowl of an electric mixer, using your paddle attachment, you're going to whisk together 1 1/4 cups of granulated sugar, 1 cup of white whole wheat flour, or any whole wheat flour you want to use. I like white whole wheat flour. It's not as wheaty tasting, although it does have a great fiber content, and it just gives a nice little nuttiness to the cinnamon rolls that I really, really like. And you're going to add 2 cups of all-purpose flour and 1 teaspoon of table salt, that's the fine grain salt, and I'm going to add a little bit of chemical leavener here, because I want super puffy cinnamon rolls. A tablespoon of baking powder. And you heard me correctly, this is a yeast spread, but I'm adding baking powder. Yes. And you're going to add 1 tablespoon plus 2 teaspoons of instant or fast rising yeast. And that's a lot of yeast, so we're going to get a lot of puff, a lot of bang for our buck here. Using the paddle attachment, we're going to slowly add that egg and warm milk mixture into the dry ingredients on low speed. And you're going to raise the speed to medium and mix for a few minutes. Now you're going to change to the dough hook and slowly add 7 cups of all-purpose flour until a dough forms. You can do this by hand as well, so you could take the dough off in that mixing bowl. You could take it off the motor and just mix it in by hand. Or you can let the dough hook do its work and then pour the dough onto a work surface and lightly knead it using a dough scraper to scoop it up and fold it over onto itself. It should ultimately be smooth and elastic. Now you're going to place this dough in a large greased bowl, and you want to oil it with either nonstick cooking spray or a little bit of neutral oil like a canola oil. And you want to put the dough in there and flip it over so the grease side is up. Cover it with plastic wrap and allow it to rise for 1 hour or until it's doubled in size. And it will double in size, so your bowl better be big enough. So make sure you get a large grease bowl. While it's rising, we're going to prepare our cinnamon filling, my favorite part. So you're going to whisk together 4 tablespoons of ground cinnamon. 4 tablespoons. That's a lot of cinnamon, but I love it. And 1 1/2 cups of dark brown sugar. So get that all together. Sometimes I actually use my hands to mix it up. And then you're going to blend in 2 sticks or 1 cup of very soft, unsalted butter. And mix that in with the cinnamon and then sugar and set it aside. You can also add raisins if you want, or nuts, and we can do that later if you want when the dough is rolled out, but I'm a traditional cinnamon roll gal. Now it's time to assemble them. This is the fun part. This is where you call the kids in, and anybody that loves to get their hands on the dough. And you're going to divide the dough into 2 equal pieces. Remember, it's been rising, so it should be pretty big. And using a rolling pin, you want to roll out 1/2 at a time. So put 1/2 back in the bowl, cover it with the plastic wrap, and put it aside for a little while. And roll out 1/2 about 13 by 18 inches. So it's going to be a big rectangle. And if it's not really a perfect 13 by 18 inch rectangle, don't sweat it. Don't get hung up on the dimensions. You just want to think rectangle. You don't want a circle, you don't want an oval, you actually want a rectangle. And using an offset spatula, you want to spread 1/2 of that cinnamon sugar butter over the entire rectangle. Here, you could sprinkle on some chopped nuts, you could sprinkle in some raisins, dried cherries, currants, whatever you want to do here, even some jam. But I'm just sticking with my cinnamon sugar butter. Now, this is where you're going to roll the dough like you're rolling up a towel going home from the beach, real tight. You want a lot of spirals because you want a lot of spirals of cinnamon butter. So you're going to start at the longer side and you're going to roll tightly tight and pull back as you roll that log up, like you're rolling up that towel, that beach towel. And then you're going to spray. Remember, we sprayed our two 13 by 9 by 2 inch baking pans or our sheet pans, whatever you decide, using a long, sharp knife. You want to cut the log crosswise into 1 to 1.5 inch thick slices. And you should have about 12 slices, so 12 cinnamon rolls from this 1/2. And you want to put them cut side up into the pan, into one pan. Stuff them in there. They should fit nicely. Now you're going to cover these with a kitchen towel or some plastic wrap and let them rise yet again. All right, till they get nice and puffy. And that's going to be about 35 minutes. You're going to repeat doing this rolling thing with the remainder of the other half and fill and roll just like I described, like you're rolling up that towel super tight and then cut into 12 more rolls. So you're going to have a total of 24 cinnamon rolls. All right, enough for your kids to get their fill now and maybe even a few to freeze. Maybe not. I don't know, depending on how good they are. And these are good. So once you have let them rise for 25 to 35 minutes after they're formed, you're going to put them in a 350 degree oven. So you're going to preheat your oven while they're rising. Make sure you give your oven about 15 to 20 minutes to preheat. You're going to rotate your pans midway through baking and bake them for about 25 minutes or until they're light brown. You want to see a light brown color. Now, while they're baking, you're going to prepare a glaze because we're not done yet. So in a bowl, you're going to put 4 cups of confectioner's sugar. Yeah, that's a lot of glaze. That's a lot of confectioner's sugar. I know it, but do it because you'll be so thankful you did. So 4 cups of confectioner's sugar. You're going to put in 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract and about 4 to 6 tablespoons of milk or cream. You can even use water if you want. You could use orange juice, maple syrup, anything else you wanted as a liquid. But this is a small little warning. You don't want to make too thin an icing. So you want to make a very thick, almost like a library paste. Well, when I was a kid, we had library paste. Most kids ate it and never used it, but it was very thick. So a little bit of a thinned down library paste, okay? Maybe your parents will know what I'm talking about. And then you want to spread it when the cinnamon rolls come out. You're going to actually spread it over each cinnamon roll. And they actually will spread. The warmth of the hot cinnamon roll will spread that glaze over. And then just let it set. And I don't know how many minutes you're going to be able to wait before you can keep your hot, sticky little hands off of literally prying one of these out of the pan to try them. They are outrageous. If you want this recipe, you can go to my website, chefgailsokol.com. Thanks so much for listening. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, my YouTube channel, and my website, chefgailsokol.com. And on my next show, we're going to be discussing 5 great hacks to making you a better baker.